It's inevitable that the journey towards the understanding and appreciation of William Shakespeare's plays will eventually lead us here. I'm standing on the stage of the Swan Theatre, one of the auditoria of the Royal Shakespeare Company here in Stratford-upon-Avon in England. You're about to witness what may be a unique experiment in the performing of Shakespeare. A group of American and British actors, most of whom had never worked together before, convened in New York for an intensive two-day workshop sponsored by Applause Books and led by the legendary Cicely Berry. Now, many of these actors will be known to you through their starring roles in movies and plays, but they didn't attend this workshop as stars, but as students in search of a deeper understanding of their craft. And what makes it so special, perhaps unique, is that we see this truly wonderful group of actors from both sides of the Atlantic working together and finding a collective response to Shakespeare's language. As an actor, I know only too well what a difficult and courageous thing it was for them to do, knowing that the camera was recording it, mistakes and all. But you'll see them discovering layers of meaning and rhythm in the text for themselves, laying themselves open to doing exercises, making mistakes, but also, and this is important, finding the joy in the language. Shakespeare seems to satisfy some hunger in ourselves for language. He offers us stories that connect with something very deep inside us. And the actor's challenge is to learn to speak it so it communicates with today's audience, almost to make it sound colloquial. The work was also about bringing together two disparate acting styles, British and American, to see how each way of working could feed and nourish the other, not by saying there's only one way of doing it, but by pooling ideas and finding out how the cultures interact. In this first workshop, Cis and the actors look at rhythm. For any actor, making the verse sound natural is a never-ending quest. Iambic pentameter is often seen as an obstacle to communication, but if it's used right, it can be the most wonderful aid to any actor. In my experience, when it's mastered, it works like a ramp, carrying me, the actor, into a higher plane emotionally, from which my own experience and imagination can then take wing. First, we'll be looking at two sonnets, the prologue to Romeo and Juliet, which is written in sonnet form, and sonnet 129. And as we do it, we'll be beating out the rhythm.
The second one, we just work the second bit.
Yeah, but we're doing it as if it's finished.
Right. Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
You want us to start?
Whenever
right,
you're ready.
Can we gather, please? Can we collect? Can we gather? Right. We're going to do something really...
Oh, dear.
Well, there is much to say. These workshops are primarily about Shakespeare, the speaking of Shakespeare now. The bottom line question must surely be, how does the modern actor connect with that often extravagant language, yet feel truthful in today's world? As soon as we look at a Shakespeare play, we know it is different in some way. We know, we can see it is mainly written in blank verse. We know the verse line is an iambic pentameter. Now, don't be put off by the term iambic pentameter. All it means is that there are 5 stressed beats in each line, and in each line, each beat is made up of 1 weak and 1 strong syllable. Ti-tum, 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 ti-tum. And when the iambic pentameter pattern is broken, it is telling us something, i.e. there is a clue to the character and the situation because the rhythm is broken somewhere. Within that strict iambic beat, there is an infinite variation of rhythm and word texture. We know that the writing moves often into prose, and when it does, there is a reason for it. We know also that it contains forms of rhetoric like antithesis, assonance, alliteration, ladders of thought, etc., all of which we will be investigating in these workshops. The exercises I've developed are about setting up certain physical resistances in order to help the actor release the language and also your subconscious reaction to it. Because often one is so caught up in making sense of it that you lose that need or lose the possibility of the language. And it is not until we release it that we find the possibility of the meaning. I hope we'll see that accent in itself is not a stumbling block. By that I mean actors often feel that the most important thing in Shakespeare is to speak it right, either in received pronunciation in the UK or standard American. I believe this emasculates the language, makes it feel at a distance. After all, Shakespeare did not write in received pronunciation or standard American. What we in this group have to find is the muscularity of this language, the sense that words, thoughts are movement, movement within ourselves. We want it to sound as though it is being spoken for now, yet we also want to honor the rhythm and the image, because the image tells us about that interior world. So how do we enter this imaginative world? If we keep it as only being truthful to ourselves now, we diminish it. And as actors, we have to ask, is there something here which takes us further than the psychological dilemma of the character? We also need to get the audience to hear something beyond the text, beyond the literal understanding of the motive, the feeling, the meaning, to hear what is under the text. And so much has been written about Shakespeare and about how to perform it as if there were a right way, that it is difficult to throw all that out of the window and allow our intuition to work, allow us to hear it within ourselves. We want to make it seem ordinary but not be ordinary. Words should disturb, delight and provoke the hearer, and not merely make sense. Our job is to make people think as well as feel, otherwise we patronize. But to get to this point, we need to work, we need to practice this language to see how its form and music connects with us, with and informs our world. Now, in these workshops, I'm going to be working with Andrew Wade, who is my colleague at the Royal Shakespeare Company. He will be also leading the preparation video. So this is Andrew. Now, I would like to get on to some work. So gallop apace, you fiery-footed steeds, towards Phoebus' lodging. Enough talk. Let's work. Now we start our exploration with a straightforward piece of storytelling, the prologue from Romeo and Juliet. This sets up the plot of the play, and like any good story, it excites our interest and makes us want to listen. It is particularly useful because we don't have to worry about character, and so we can concentrate on the form in which it is written. We will find out it tells us so much about the verse rhythms which Shakespeare uses throughout his work, the iambic pentameter. What I'd like to do is that you read it, we read it all together, and can you just move around anywhere in the space, muttering it over to yourselves? Right? Okay, yeah, muttering.
Two households, both alike in dignity, fair for...
Walking round, speaking it all together, frees us and so helps us to feel the movement of the language itself. We become familiar with the text without feeling any pressure to do it right, for no one is listening.
With the attend, what ear shall miss, our toil shall strive to mend.
Okay, right. Now, I'm starting with this because it isn't to do with character, do you see, and it's quite good to isolate certain things on it. Just let's do it again, beating the meter out. Now, if we take that meter as to tum, so we're now going to beat out the weak and the strong syllables. Notice how much the stress can vary within a single line. It is like there is a tussle going on between the words we stress to keep the meter and the words we need to stress in order to make sense. Just beating it very gently. The important thing is that we notice when the meter stress and the sense stress do not coincide. Does that make sense? Okay. So just beat it through very gently like that. To households both alike in dignity, in fair Verona where we lay our scene, from fortune's grudge break to new mutiny, where civil blood makes civil hands unclean. From forth the fatal lawrence of these two foes, a pair of star-crossed lovers take their life, whose misadventures piteous overthrows doth with their death bleed their parents' strife. The fearful passage of their death-marked love, and the continuance of their parents' rage, which but their children's end naught could remove, has now the 2 hours traffic of our sage. The which if you with patient ears attend, what here shall miss our toil shall strive to mend. Yes, what do you notice?
You catapulted over continuance.
What? Yes, continuance. I mean, that's very full there. But then those things happen lots in the plays, you know, particularly in the late plays when the lines are very full, you know, and you have to work out where that underlying beat is. Is that underlying beat important anyway? What does it do for it? Perhaps the bottom line in Shakespeare is A, that there is not a full stop till the end of the play, or we have to look at it that way, and B, there's energies of different kinds going on all the time. And one energy is in this meter, is how that beat goes through, and you can't stop on it too much. I mean, it is there that we have to feel it. So let's do it again, just quite gently. To households both alike in dignity, in fair Verona where we lay our scene, from ancient grudge break to new mutiny, where civil blood makes... You can hear that the meter stress goes to households both alike in dignity, and it's quite regular. But to make absolute sense of it, we need to take time over those first 2 words, 2 households, and then both alike in dignity. You can hear how the vowels and consonants in those first 2 words take longer to speak, whereas in the end words, they are quite short. And naught could remove has now the 2 hours traffic of our stage, the which if you with patient ears attend, what here shall miss our toil shall strive to mend. It's quite interesting, isn't it, when you do that? What do you hear from it? I mean, all this, the whole of the 3 workshops is really about what we hear under the language, what is there underneath. Some words take much longer to say, for instance, don't they? And that tells us the continuance of their parents' reign. Do you see? All sorts of things happen, and yet there is a beat behind it, underneath, which is sort of keeping it together, keeping its form together. Right. So, should we stand up and do it? Okay. And just walk around and, again, doing it for your own sense. Changing direction on punctuation marks. Okay, just to get familiar with it. Go. By changing direction at the punctuation marks, we very quickly get a sense of how the thoughts are moving. This is a really useful exercise when working on character. We discover that thought is movement, and it makes us realize how rapidly we change direction in our minds. Thought is also breath. So we start to experience how we are breathing as a character. We have been doing these exercises as a group, but they can be done equally well on your own. Okay, back in the circle. I'd like to read it again, but what I want you to concentrate on is being on each word. being on the word. So I'm going to, if I don't feel that is happening, I'm going to say what, and you just have to repeat it back. But don't go, don't shout at me. Right, okay.
Two households.
Right, how many households?
Two.
Right. Now, what really this is about is that we tend to read everything in clumps of sense. Do you see? And when we do that, we sometimes miss out things that are happening in the words, a sort of activity with the words, because it makes us, in a way, present the end thought without discovering the thought as we go through. Right, so this is just an exercise in that. But just know that you're saying two, what? Households. Both? No, I'm getting both alike. I want both alike in dignity. This is what I'm saying. I don't want in fair Verona, which makes sense for the moment. I want in fair where? Verona. Do you see? Just keep that question going through it. Start it again. Two households, both alike in dignity. When we read a piece of text, our first impulse is to make sense of it. And the danger is that having come to a conclusion about the meaning, we often miss out on the surprise within the language, the possibilities, where it takes you. Where civil blood makes civil hands. No, where civil what? Civil blood, yes. Where civil blood makes civil hands unclean. Do you see what I mean? I mean, it's very laboured, this, but I think every part that you work on, you need to do this exercise on some part of it. I mean, all the exercises we do, you know, have to be layered through a rehearsal process, and you find more the more you know about your character. Then you come back to exercises like this. Can we just find out where maybe the line breaks? Because a lot of the, it's called a caesura. Usually there is a break in a line, not in every line, but there's a sort of moment where I like to call it a poise. I think Edith Evans said that, so I'm all right, aren't I? A poise, rather than a hold or a pause, because it's not a pause, it's a poise, while that word can drop into your audience, because we can only take a certain number of words at a time. I think there's research being done into that, isn't there?
It's like 7 and 9 words or something.
Yes.
It's often a verse line.
Yes. Yeah. That we can actually, as listeners, take in. And we want those moments when it can poise on that line. So we, as a listener, know where you are. So just, this may not work. It's quite, it's a bit difficult, but so maybe the first line goes, two households, both alike in dignity. But so we're going to do half a line each. And you've just got to make up your mind on the spot where it breaks. So if it's wrong, it doesn't matter.
There wouldn't be a poise after household, would there?
There might be, you see.
Yeah, I would think.
Yeah, I think you would.
That sets us up
Yeah.
to say, there's two.
Yep.
Now what?
Right. Okay.
So we
So
can take our liberty with that.
take your liberty.
Two households.
There might be a 3 breaks, or you might feel there are none. So just be free with it. Okay.
Two households, both alike in dignity.
In fair Verona.
Where we lay our scene.
From ancient grudge.
Break to new mutiny. Where civil blood
Make civil hands unclean.
Right, let's do it one more time, a little bit quicker.
Can we start then?
Yep.
Two households, both alike in dignity.
In fair Verona.
Where we lay our scene. From ancient grudge.
Break to new mutiny.
where civil blood makes civil hands unclean.
From forth the fatal loins of these two foes, a pair of star-crossed lovers,
Take their life.
whose misadventured
Hideous overthrow.
Doth with their death.
bury their parents' strife.
The fearful passage of their
Death-marked love.
And the continuance,
Of their parents' rage.
which, but their children's end,
naught could remove.
is now the 2 hours' traffic of our stage.
The which, if you with patient ears attend,
What here shall miss?
Our toil shall
strive to mend.
All right. But can you begin to hear it? I mean, this is really what this is about. Is listening, isn't it? Is listening and to see how we can keep our own persona, but keep a rhythm going on, keep something going on. Yeah, it's quite exciting, really, isn't it? That sometimes you can't have a break, but sometimes that break just pushes you to the end. I mean, that amazing where civil blood makes civil hands unclean, and it feeds that last. It's the last word that is so often the most important word, because it turns everything that you've said before on its head. Can you feel that? Yeah. Do you notice anything about the last two lines? What? Yeah. It's a sonnet, so it rhymes. There is a resolution about it. And so often we should be doing other things which just point that up, that there is something coming to a resolution, maybe sometimes a healing.
There's hope, too, at the end.
I was going to say it also points out the speaker, takes them out of the character of the simple storyteller, to the humility to say, if you don't understand what I'm telling you, we'll do our best to try and help you understand this play. It calls attention to the...
Yes. There's always a kind of existential thing somewhere there, isn't there? Let's look at ourselves.
The scariest part of it to me is how to not be presenting or arguing in front of a group of people, you know?
Yeah.
I've relied on an objective, and when I look at a speech that contemplates in an existential way, very frightening. It feels like you're falling instead of acting.
Yes, this is a very vital question, what you just asked. Extremely.
Sis, I don't know if the last words of each of the lines also almost completely give you the sense of, you know, dignity of what the play is. The play to come, you know, dignity, scene, mutiny, unclean foes, life, overthrow, strife.
Should we just read them all together? Just say, that's excellent, Lennie. Right. Dignity, scene, mutiny. By repeating the last words of a speech, we hear the through line of its story. The words lead us through, and are often rather exciting.
Remove, stage, attend, mend.
It's brilliant, isn't it? That's fantastic. Yeah, fantastic. Oh, good. you stay now. Can we just get a little bit together? And what I just want to do is just jostle each other gently while you're doing it, but quite quietly. Two households, both alike in dignity, in fair Verona, where we lay our scene, from ancient grudge. This exercise stops us making the voice behave in the way we think it should. It not only releases the basic violence in the writing, words like grudge, rage, it also releases something in our own voice, some kind of natural, primitive response. Doth with their death bury their parents. Okay, can you feel that? You see that? I mean, just this is a silly thing because it's an exercise, but you'd still get irritated when you, don't you? And it just releases something in that language. I tell you what I would like, and that's one person to read it in the center.
Toby.
No, because I want us just to repeat words that, without looking at it, but the words which you feel grab you as he does it. Make it up to you.
Two households, both alike in dignity. In fair Verona,
just get a bit Verona.
In fair Verona, where we lay our scene.
Don't wait for them.
From ancient grudge to new mutiny, where civil blood makes civil hands unclean. From forth of fatal loins face two foes, a pair of star-crossed lovers take their life. Whose misadventured, piteous over hideous, doth with their death bury their parents' strife. The fearful passage of their death-marked love, and the continuance of their parents' rage, but their children's end, naught could remove, is now the 2 hours' traffic of our stage. The which, if you with patient ears attend, what here shall miss, our toil shall strive mend.
Great, thanks. It's useful just to hear it by one person, actually. There's lots of things happening. What I'm interested in is that word households. That's what we have to grab onto, because it's not like two houses, is it? No. It's like households, families, airing cupboards, larders, everything. Households, and it takes a long time to say. 2 households, both alike in dignity. And then you've got quite short things after that. But these are all things that we can help.
The first 2 lines will set it up, and then it kind of speeds. It seems to have this kind of momentum which goes from ancient grudge break to new beauty. It sort of really draws you into the story.
Yes.
And then it sort of slows down towards the end.
That's right.
Changes again.
Yes, and then it opens it out to in a slightly more philosophical way.
Yeah.
From ancient grudge break. I mean, it's very violent. That. I mean, if we think of that language, that is violent language.
It's weird how you can get taken in by the sexy words.
Yes.
Like break and mutiny and civil blood. And then if you actually look at the more personal words, like there, the amount of times Shakespeare repeats there, keeping it personal, keeping it about them.
Yeah.
You know, their death, their parents, their death-marked love, the countenance of their parents' rage. If you actually just went through and picked the words that aren't obviously sexy and just went through, you know, those sort of ones, you'd find maybe how he kind of keeps going, because in some cases, when we did that, we did go for those words because they're really good and actors love them because we can make them out and, you know, have a good time with these.
Also, when Toby was reading, it's like the storytelling words are like things like which and from, and that's what kind of keeps it going in a way, and those, you know, you tend to lose those as well.
Is there anything that you would like to say after doing that exercise? Is there anything that sort of came to you that, like, revealed itself?
One thing that I think as an American and as an African American, that in approaching Shakespeare, we find that the words get in the way, basically because we come from such an emotional, feeling, visceral kind of immediacy that the words are like, you know, you're sitting waiting to say, but just could you just give me the idea of what you're talking about and get on with it? So that to jump on top of the word or to be on the word, what you said, it made it visceral and alive in a different way. That kind of on it, you know, from seeing it worked that way, I never saw it worked on the word like that viscerally.
Well, that's exactly what I'm hoping, that it will bring together that area of the visceral feeling of it, and yet with the meaning and, you know, and getting that balance right. That's great. Just to summarize and sum up what we've just done for a moment, I hope what we've done is hear an underlying beat and the stressed and unstressed syllables knocking against each other, where it's irregular, where the sense stress and the meter stress is again knocking against each other, and the need to lay the first line of a speech, like in Two Households. We need that moment to just let the premise of it drop in. So much to do with this language is about giving the right spaces between the words. Each line is open to so much variation, syncopation I like to call it, like a line of jazz or blues or reggae. And this variation is what gives the wonderful energy and excitement to the speaking, for everyone will hear it differently. Working on sonnets is very good because it gives you a shape of something, a shape of thinking, a form. It makes you aware of that. Now, a sonnet is made up of 14 lines, and a speech from a play can be 3 or 4 times as long. Yet there is a basic structure which is common to both. What is important is for us to realize that you lay the subject almost at the beginning of something, and then you argue it through, and then you come to some kind of conclusion. So to be or not to be, that is the question, that's the premise. Then he argues it through. It is very important for us to ask ourselves, how much do we argue things through to ourselves? We don't just feel, really, do we? So let's, with that in mind, just read it quite quietly,
The expense of spirit in a waste of shame is lust in action.
But it doesn't stop there, does it? Go on. Until action. Lust is what? Urgent, murderous, bloody, full-flame, savage, extreme, rude, cruel, not to trust, enjoy no sooner, but despise the straight, has reason hunted, and no sooner had, has reason hated, as a swallow bait,
On purpose laid to make the taker mad, mad in pursuit and in possession so, had, having, and in quest to have,
extreme, a bliss in proof,
and proved a very woe. Before a joy proposed, behind a dream. All this the world well knows, yet none knows well to shun the heaven that leads men to this hell.
No. What words, immediately stick out for you?
Bait.
Yes. Because what happens when a fish eats bait? Yes, to me.
Murderous.
Murderous, yes. And hunted.
It's almost like a pendulum. The way the antithesis kind of comes, as you said, hunted and hated, and a bliss and proof. It almost musically says, on the one hand, there's this, on the other hand, there's that. It's this, and it's that, and it's this, and it's that, and it's this all the way through.
Yeah.
It goes past, present, future, past, present, future. Had, having, to have.
Yes, that's very true. Very important.
So if you feel lusty, it's whatever. But until you perform it, it'll be these things. So you're in a dilemma.
It's before, during, and after.
Once you've done it.
So let's just clarify, what it does mean. What would you say the premise was? Can we just do it? Yes. What?
Lust stinks.
A spirit is a euphemism for semen, right? The expense of spirit in a waste of shame is lust in action. Okay. So it is about having sex without love, presumably. That's what it is. Great. Does that feel good?
It was good for me.
Hang about there. Let's do it one time as sharp as that. Just walking quite briskly, there's not a lot of space, but walking quite briskly around the studio, changing direction absolutely on every punctuation mark. Just really brisk, okay? Go. The expense of spirit, waste of shame, is lust in action. Until action, lust is urgent, murderous, bloody, full-flame, savage, extreme, rude, cruel, not Punctuation is always a good guide to the syntax of the thought. How one thought is always provoking the next, feeding the next, and how our thoughts are always on the move. Of course, different editions of Shakespeare have different punctuation, and the actor always has to choose which version makes most sense to their concept of the part. It is, isn't it?
It's like you're a
Yes. So it's telling us where the blood is. I mean, she's feeling hot, basically. It just gives us a whole different dimension to how the thoughts are moving. And yet it is thinking, isn't it?
It's like what you were saying about this, the monologues. I mean, to wander around in a fit, it, of course, brings it all there. And then, but to have to actually make it clear to an audience and just be still. And,
Yes. Any exercise can't actually answer you doing it in performance, can it quite?
Well, it can inform.
But it hopefully informs that.
Right.
Or the pulling. Yes. I felt so alive when we were doing this pulling thing, and I have the same question.
Yes, it's like,
I mean, maybe it's just an awareness, but...
I think it is that. I think it's somehow making the language as active in its way.
Right.
I never know what my need is, except that it's written on the page and I have to say
That's right.
And there is a physical, I mean, apart from what it means, that your insides start getting juddery.
Hopefully,
you
great.
feel that
Yes.
physical,
Yes.
the physical nature of language.
It's
Just
exhausting.
literally, you're moving these muscles around, and however he structures it, that your ribs are moving in a different way, and actually it stops you thinking too much, so that you can just as you start to work on something, hand yourself over in a
Great,
way.
yes. I mean, there is no answer quite
Right.
to what you said. Do you know what I mean?
Right,
And
right.
every actor is different and has to find their
Right.
own link in a way and way in. This sonnet is so jagged in the way it uses the meter. Savage, extreme, rude, cruel, not to trust. And precisely because it is going against the regular beat, knocking against it, I like to say, we are shocked into realizing the violent turmoil in his mind. This is the passion and chaos which is always present in Shakespeare. It is never that well behaved. We must somehow keep that experience of the exercise alive in our blood. Now we're going to look at how all these points of rhythm can inform a character. I want to look at two speeches, one from The Winter's Tale, Leontes, and then Capulet from Romeo and Juliet. There are three characters in this scene: Leontes, king of Sicilia, his wife Hermione, his friend Polixenes, king of Bohemia. Leontes, having set up a situation where he has asked Hermione to persuade Polixenes to stay a month longer with them in Sicilia, he then eavesdrops on their conversation. And as he listens, he becomes convinced that Hermione is unfaithful.
Is whispering nothing? Is leaning cheek to cheek? Is meeting noses? Kissing with inside lip? Stopping the career of laughter with a sigh? A note infallible of breaking honesty? Horsing foot on foot? Skulking in corners? Wishing clocks more swift? Hours, minutes, noon, midnight, and all eyes blind with the pin and web but theirs. Theirs only, that would unseen be wicked. Is this nothing? Why then the world and all its end is nothing. The covering sky is nothing. Bohemia, nothing. My wife is nothing. Nor nothing have these nothings, if this be nothing.
So there's a lot of movement there. Could you read it one more time? Can you just come into the centre? Just get a bit more, and just whisper back, just round him, let him be in the centre a bit more. Just whisper back at him the words, just whisper them.
Is whispering nothing? Is leaning cheek to cheek? Is meeting noses? Kissing with inside lips? Stopping the career of laughter with a sigh? A note infallible of breaking honesty? Horsing foot on foot, skulking in corners, wishing clocks more swift, hours, minutes, noon, midnight, and all eyes blind with the pin and web but theirs only, would unseen be wicked. Is this nothing? Why, then the world and all that's in it is nothing. The covering sky is nothing. Bohemia, nothing. My wife is nothing, nor nothing have these nothings, if this be nothing.
Did that help at all?
Yeah, it provided a kind of a resistance and a need to convince,
yes.
and a sort of paranoia.
Exactly
which I normally feel. So it was kind of like being home.
Right, stand up then. That's exactly what I wanted you to feel, and it was coming from all over the place. Right, just walk around, and can you follow him around doing that? Okay.
Is whispering nothing? Is leaning cheek to cheek? Is meeting noses? Kissing with inside lips? Stopping the career of laughter with a sigh? A note infallible of breaking honesty? Horsing foot on foot, skulking in corners, wishing clocks more swift, hours, minutes, noon, midnight, and all eyes blind with a pin and web, but theirs only, that would unseen be wicked.
Unseen.
Is this nothing?
Nothing.
Why then, the world and all that's in it is nothing. Nothing. The covering sky is nothing. Bohemia, nothing. My wife is nothing, nor nothing. Have these nothings, if this be nothing.
Well, that was terrifying.
Great. I mean, like Edward Bond would say that words are like the top of an earth shift, basically. And they still are even in modern language, aren't they? Because sometimes we're covering up so much, but in a much more minimal way. But this is like that, isn't it? It's huge, it's erupting all the time.
It's all about the action. It's all about, I mean, in this, what the speech is doing, and the tendency when you I'll have to read this in this class, so I better, get it all.
Yeah.
And it's, of course, not about that, but that's somehow to try to break that.
I mean, great. I mean, I don't want to be superficial about this, because when you're working on a character, it is different. I mean, had you been working on that for like 3 weeks, 4 weeks?
I have been. No. Just kidding.
No, I mean in relation to the whole play.
Right.
There are many, many other considerations that you have to do. I'm just saying this because I don't want people to think that you've done that exercise and that'll be it, because it will change and change. And really, what I want to say is exercises need to be layered through rehearsal period, because if you were halfway in and then we did an exercise like that, then you would find different things, because you would have been thinking about it so much, but then hopefully that would release the thinking of it. What you've been taught.
Read it. I found it
was
so
horrendous,
incredibly
wasn't
moving.
it? Yes, it really
just
does
the first,
get
before
you.
any. Yeah. Also, just the absolute
Yeah.
simplicity of, I guess, taking the onus off of it and saying, okay,
Yeah.
now we're just going to read it.
Yes. But and
so
your
moved by
reaction
that.
about it being paranoid is dead on right.
Yeah.
And having done those exercises, were you working then and then went back into and then went to play the scene? I think you would find a lot of difference.
One question: when you're starting just to work on a part like this, for instance, I mean, to me, is it just about finding the sense? I mean, you've got to first of all just simply start with the thought and
Absolutely.
And then so that even these exercises, I mean, because obviously it would help if I knew it. So it's like a step process then.
You're absolutely right. It's not much good doing this exercise until you've thought more about it.
Yeah.
And then you start to finding, you will have a depth of perception about the character.
Right.
And then this will start to inform it and
Do you
start to
think
help you really find the form of it, so that you can marry what you feel with a form which may make it even stronger. What I'm really saying is going back to feeling the meter and everything of it, which will kind of give it its form. Does that make any sense?
Yes.
I find that often on the first day of rehearsal, you have a read-through. And often the best performances people give are at the read-through, because it's like instinctive. They're working purely instinctively on, just like that first reading was very strong. And often like that exercise would be great when somebody in a way has thought too much about it and it suddenly becomes strangled. Because often if you're just doing the sense, a speech becomes really boring, because you're just working, whereas that kind of gets the kind of emotions.
Now, I think this is very important to say, because anything I say, I'm only working on and really emphasizing this area, because this is the area that's left out so much. But it can't be done without a depth, otherwise it would be superficial.
I think when you said you were paranoid by us chasing you, it's a natural response when people are running after you, freaked out. But I think at the heart of the speech, when you were just reading it, you were feeling those feelings, and so when you were moving around, just whatever that was, that it became heightened.
Yes.
Like if I was feeling sexy in that scene, maybe I would just become explosive with my sex or whatever, or something else. Or if I was feeling very sad, I might discover the anger in that sadness or something.
Right. So it's just another level.
Just do it one more time, quite quietly, but just being with it, and starting quite low, and just getting the sense that he's feeding himself.
Yeah. Is whispering nothing, is leaning cheek to cheek, is meeting noses,
kissing with inside lip, stopping the career of laughter with a sigh, a note infallible of breaking honesty, horsing foot on foot, skulking in corners, wishing clocks more swift, hours, minutes, noon, midnight, and all eyes blind with the pin and web, but theirs only, that would unseen be wicked. Is this nothing? Why, then the world and all that's in it is nothing. The covering sky is nothing. Bohemia, nothing. My wife is nothing, nor nothing have these nothings, if this be nothing.
It's self-feeding in a way, isn't it?
It's always so much about staying in the moment and not getting ahead of yourself in these speeches, because it's the tendency, as you say, is to, and that's what being on the word is so helpful, because if you just, the minute you're ahead of yourself, you've lost it, you know. It's just what I tend to do.
And yet there is this, you know, is whispering nothing, is leaning cheek to cheek, is meeting noses, kissing with inside lips, stopping the career. I mean, it goes mad there. It's, the meter is there underneath it. And the skill is to keep that meter somewhere there, right. Which doesn't mean to say you've got to be regular, because often there's suspense there. You can suspend it, like you do in a blues blind with a pin and web, but there's only that would unseen be wicked. Is this nothing? It has a meter to it there, which we will go on looking at in a speech this afternoon. And our Capulet. Juliet has refused to consent to marry Paris, Capulet's choice of husband for her. And she's in fact already married to Romeo without her father's knowledge. We hear Capulet's reaction in this highly charged speech.
God's bread, it makes me mad. Day, night, hour, tide, time, work, play, alone, in company, still my care hath been to have her matched. And having now provided a gentleman of noble parentage, of fair demean, youthful and nobly trained, stuffed, as they say, with honourable parts, proportioned as one's thought would wish a man, and then to have a wretched puling fool, a whining mammet in her fortune's tender, to answer, I'll not wed, I cannot love, I am too young, I pray you pardon me. But, an you will not wed, I'll pardon you. Graze where you will, you shall not house with me. Look to it, think on't, I do not use to jest. Thursday is near. Lay hand on heart, advise. An you be mine, I'll give you to my friend. And you be not, hang, beg, starve, die in the streets, for by my soul I'll ne'er acknowledge thee, nor what is mine shall never do thee good. Trust to it. Bethink you. I'll not be forsworn. It's astonishing.
Yeah, it is astonishing.
I mean, Capulet is one of those parts that you kind of gloss over. You think, that's right. He's just the father, and he's it's extraordinary. Yeah. The anger, the rage that was. This is the rage that was talked about in the prologue.
Sister is everything that a parent would ever say to a child. It's so shocking. It's the exact opposite of care and parenting. You know, right in her face. It's savage.
Perhaps he's shocking himself as he's saying it, but nevertheless,
you felt it. That's what it
doesn't stop him meaning it or saying it.
That's right. But does he mean to say that before he starts? Does he mean to say all of that?
The thing that I find very difficult is the point at which decisions get made, because I always want as an actor to take a long time to, we have that all thing working up to some emotion or finding it truthfully, and Shakespeare's so rigorous that you want that the moment where your thinking matches his words.
Because we do think very quickly,
but that point where the decisions are made, to find that
because sometimes I think we have made up our minds what we're going to do in our stomachs before it comes to words, doesn't it? And sometimes we don't. Sometimes we have to sort of think it gently as we go along and work it out.
But the most exciting thing in watching something is when you're watching the moment, when the thought is formed. And that's what you're chasing all the time. It's like when you were splitting up, making us get on the word. It's going back to the same thing.
Exactly.
That you don't take for granted what you're going to say or where you're going to arrive.
No. Capulet, it does seem, because in a way it is a proclamation. It's something he has thought about, but it's in the telling, in the saying of it, it's as though he gets carried away.
I think that's the important thing, is that probably he has made up his mind, but actually starting to speak and being involved in it, it becomes bigger, doesn't it?
It's not an intellectual progression. It's not an argued
He does say,
speech.
it makes me mad.
Yeah, right at the start.
What mad does. What does madness do?
Yeah.
And that's
like
really the premise, isn't it? It makes me mad,
There's some fed-upness there, too. So he's done everything that he could do to make this right, and, you know, and you do this to me, so I'm fed up. And being fed up spews all those things out.
What he's saying is, you don't want to marry the person I want you to, therefore I'm going to disown you and chuck you out the street. That is irrational.
He tells Paris, win her heart, woo her. Because my choice in this is just a part of her decision. And suddenly in this scene, he just says, you're going to do it. So that's interesting.
Someone says, is the first God's breath?
God's bread. Where does that come from? What an expression.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's communion, isn't it?
Eucharist.
Yeah. What I mean is, there's something interesting when a character says, God's bread, it makes me mad. You're not just mad, you're telling everyone around. It's like Lear in The Banishment of Kent and Cordelia, when it's so obviously a rash thing to do, and he's almost aware of how rash it is. I think he has a couple of those, too, moments of, dear God, excuse me, but I'm just really pissed off about this. It's sort of
It's like a kind of speech about failure, isn't it? I mean, the more he fails, the more he speaks. The more he keeps going. If he succeeded, he would say it in one line. But he keeps going one line after another, and he fails. Because the thing that's quite hard is, what I don't understand is this self-feeding thing. Because I get a bit scared of things like that. Because that sometimes to me is when an actor's doing it all by himself, and you suddenly feel really cold on stage because you think, and what's my job as Juliet to stand here and listen to him rattle on and bore the ass off me? You know, but I mean, it's like you know, it's got to be about her. It's got to be about his inadequacy and about her. And she annoys him so much that he keeps going on.
When I said self-feeding, I wasn't self-feeding emotionally, but the one thought makes him go.
Of course, I agree with that, but it's like going out. He's constantly, he is going out, and he keeps failing. I mean, whether the failure's inside him or the failure's in her, you know, she's part of him, part of his blood, part of his humanity, and his lack of humanity during that speech, and maybe his humanity is the failure, you know.
Does he have to carry on because she doesn't say, I'll follow your word?
Well, I mean, I think that, and a lot of these, I mean, it's only a personal thing, but I just think a lot of these plays, the speeches can be very long, and there's a reason for that. And I think it's a lot of times because the character's failing miserably in the scene to succeed, and he is like, and the reason it's like the reason we keep talking to people
it's really to justify yourself. You speak to justify yourself, don't you?
But Cicely, are you saying that in the text itself there are clues as to what his state of mind is?
I think
that
so,
if the text were more linear, he would be less emotionally disturbed by what he's saying?
Just do that thing. We'll all get up. But if you just change direction on God's bread, on the punctuation mark for a minute.
Right.
Okay.
God's bread. It makes me mad. Day, night, hour, tide, time, work, play, alone, in company. Still my care hath been to have her match. Lay hand on heart, advise, and you be mine. I'll give you to my friend. And
you can hear what is happening to the rhythm, how choppy it is and how volatile. The thoughts evolve as the feelings grow. It plumbs a deeper understanding.
Nor what is mine shall never do thee good. Trust to it. Bethink you. I'll not be forsworn.
It's so clear that he's having trouble.
Yes.
That the key
That's
to
it.
This, I don't mean you. But I don't mean the actor. I mean I had the same problem when I was playing Claudio in Much Ado, and he has to tear Hero to ribbons. I was doing it over and over thinking, what a mean guy, what a terrible thing to do, what an awful occurrence. When then I started to really finally work on it, I realized, unless he's having in every bit as much pain as Hero is, this scene doesn't work.
Yeah.
And Shakespeare gives it to you.
Yeah.
This scene, it's in no way, it's not an oil slick like Iago.
No.
It's someone obviously having so much trouble doing what he's doing.
But has scarcely really thought about a single word in a way. What we're really doing is thinking about the moving and fighting for breath.
Yeah.
That becomes a kind of, that's your objective, is to get these words out.
Obviously, then
So
you
then you
have
find
to
yourself-
come back and find the meaning again.
Doesn't it also, that sort of exercise stops you acting between the lines?
Yeah.
You don't kind of try and have a mind change. You
Great.
actually,
Yes.
the lines do it for you.
What I hope it does is exactly that, so that we stop explaining what is happening in any way, or describing or explaining, but the actual words are the impetus of it all, aren't they? They make it happen.
So we pause and try and think in between the lines. It's as if Shakespeare hasn't given us enough. As if, you know, as if extra thoughts are needed. And I beg to... It's probably
Gave
enough.
him heaviness, fatness.
It was brilliant.
Out of breath.
Yes.
I mean, drinks too much.
Yes.
Eats too much.
Thanks.
Everything.
Probably right.
I mean, that hang, beg, starve.
And then trying to... And one more thing.
Yes.
When Paul was saying it, and he said about the thing from the prologue is that this was the rage of the piece. It was all for coming from that is also the love from the piece.
Right.
I mean, he's speaking to somebody from the day she was born. He is love, and it's love that he's throwing out the door. And maybe the rage will help him throw that love out the door. But there is, as much as it is the rage, it is also
The rage
the
wouldn't
love.
be there if it weren't for the love.
For the love, yeah. I
The
mean,
first time he read it, the last part of the scene, when he just sat there, he was moved. He was broken because he loved.
Yeah.
Isn't the stopping and the thinking as much about this sort of need to communicate the meaning of the speech to the audience? I mean, which is a terrible trap.
Yes,
it's a terrible trap, but it's like, oh, if I really give you this word and that, I mean, it's a sort of a tightrope.
It is a tightrope, and you can't say it's one or the other because you've got to let them have the time.
Yeah.
But what we do tend to do is think about it too much.
Make decisions that such and such a word will be stressed and that will be effective. And particularly if you're an actor in the audience, you know it. You know that's not really in the scene. It's not really in the part.
And
it's a
the
decision in the
swiftness
bathroom.
of it often, you know.
In the structure of that speech, they're like you were saying earlier, they're like clues on the state of mind of the person. It's like there are two lists.
Yes.
And it's like in between the lists, it's when he's doing the list, he's out of control.
Yes, and then
and then he kind of stops and he tries to pull it back together, and he tries to be rational about it, and then he loses it again because he's being rational about it and thinking about the arguments. He loses it again. There's another huge list where he goes out of control, and it culminates in that.
Yes. And all that comes in, you see, so it's neither only being moved or only being angry. That's really what I mean by saying you can't understand till you speak it aloud, because
And all of it together.
one way you do it, and that feeds you, and then in the end you make your decision. You know, you make your choices.
It teaches you. It tells us who we are.
And now something quite different. A speech from Coriolanus. Listen here for a very different rhythm. The scene is a dialogue between Sicinius and Brutus, two tribunes of the people. Coriolanus has come to seek the vote of the people, but they both the tribunes know that Coriolanus despises the people. Here, Brutus is describing how the people come out to cheer him. He is full of contempt.
All tongues speak of him, and the clearest sights are spectacle to see him. Your prattling nurse into a rapture lets her baby cry while she chats him. The kitchen malkin pins her richest lockram about her reechy neck, clambering the walls to eye him. Stalls, bulks, windows are smothered up, leads filled and ridges horsed, with variable complexions, all agreeing in earnestness to see him. Cell-shown flamens to press among the popular throngs, and puff to win a vulgar station. Our veiled dames commit the war of white and damask in their nicely gauded cheeks to the wanton spoil of Phoebus' burning kisses. Such a pauper, as if whatsoever god who leads him were slyly crept into his human powers and gave him graceful posture.
Right. I want to do two things with this. I want to look at where the argument changes, because the extraordinary thing about the late plays is so often the thought comes to rest or a stop in the middle of a line, right? So how do we deal with that, and do we ignore the end of the lines or not? The consonants are very long, aren't they? All tongues takes quite an effort to say it. To say that all tongues. All tongues. Yeah. And the bleared sights are spectacle to see him. Your prattling nurse into a rapture lets a baby cry while she chats him. The kitchen malkin pins a richest lockram about reaching neck, clambering the walls to eye him. This speech is great to work on. Compared to Capulet, the language is full, the vowels are long, and the consonants take time to speak. It is also quite complicated, and as in the late plays, the sentences break in the middle of the line very often, yet the movement in the line carries on, making the structure quite exciting. And this poses the question, how do we keep the energy going through the line, yet allow the full stop to happen, the thought to end? I want you to do the whole thing and kick something or do something like that at the end of every line, on the last word of every line. Okay, go.
All tongues speak of him, and the clear sights a spectacle to see him. Your prattling nurse into a rapture lets her baby cry, while she chats him. Kitchen malkin pins her richest lockram about her reaching neck, clambering walls to eye him, stalls, bulks, and wearing kisses. Such a horror! As if that whatsoever god who leads him were slyly crept into his human powers and gave him graceful posture.
Yeah, sorry, that was a really silly exercise.
That was the most fun.
Right.
Positively orgasmic.
Oh my God, oh my God.
That was great.
But what I'm trying to do, this is really an exercise about structure, because we've got two lots of structures going on, haven't we? Well, three lots. We've got the meter, all tongues speak of him, and the bleared sights. That's one energy going on. We've got an energy going from line to line. And that's what I think is difficult often for actors to find, is the way that the bleared sights, what a spectacle to see him. It's always like there's a moment before the next line, because that one word is impelling something else. Am I making sense to you?
There should be a moment, or there shouldn't be?
I'm not really saying should or shouldn't.
Oh, please. Please tell me how to do this.
But I'm saying...
I only have a few...
The possibility of what that does, isn't it really, is that is the form it's written in, and each line has its space.
Is it that there is sometimes a sense meaning for the break, that it makes more sense to have a break?
Well, sometimes in the early plays, the sense comes to an end usually at the end of the line. The full stop is at the end of the line, normally. In this, the sense, the full stops come in the middle of a line. If you just read all tongues speak of him and the bleared sights are spectacle to see him, there is no point of it being written in lines. Do you see what I mean? But if you feel all tongues speak of him and the bleared sights spectacled, maybe that gives us a kind of lift into the next.
Are you saying that there's an inherent poise at the end of every line of Shakespeare? That it,
well, I think we have to take that in. Yeah, I
line?
think we have to. Don't want to make any rules, but I think that this is part of it. That we have to hear what happens if we do that. Don't ignore it.
That it ends there.
Yes.
And then there's a new.
Yeah,
Okay.
but I don't want you to think that you've got to keep slavishly to that, because I'm not of that school at all.
If like the end of the first line, if you do take a break there, it's much easier to contrast bleared and
Sights,
spectacled.
a spectacle, yes.
Because the bleared sights
Spectacle, that's brilliant, because it's actually, yes, it keeps it positive, doesn't it? Yeah. Let's do it for the argument, because it's very good to keep putting our minds into the fact that nearly every speech that you get has an argument inside it. Right, so could I have you in like 2 lines, like you that side, this side, you coming over this side. What I'd like to do is for this side to start, what the thing is to go down to every punctuation mark. So you speak the whole down to spectacle to see him, or semicolon, into a rapture, oh, you're practicing this, down to while she chats him. So either full stops or semicolons. Okay, really thinking and letting one part of the argument feed the next. Okay, so that you keep on answering. Go. All tongues speak of him, the bleared sights
are spectacle to see him.
Your prattling nurse into a rapture lets her baby cry while she chats him.
The kitchen malkin
Pins the richest lock from both,
reaching
neck clambering the walls
to iron him. Stalls, bolts, windows are smothered up.
legs filled and ridges hoarse with variable complexions,
all agreeing in earnestness to see him. Self-shown flamens do press among the popular throngs and puff to win a vulgar station. Our veiled dames commit the war of white and damask
in their nicely bordered cheeks to the wanton spoil of fever's burning kisses.
Such a pother, as if that whatsoever God leads
him was slyly
crept into his human powers and gave him graceful posture.
The actual form does something, doesn't it, to the argument itself.
I'm not clear about what is the conflict. To me, it seems like it's just one thing is just leading to the next.
Well, I think that's right, but I think there's an argument which one part of the argument feeds the next. And really what I'm after is the argument happening. Perhaps I've misled you a little bit, rather to make it seem like an argument, but it isn't. It's actually one thing leads to the next, and it's an internal kind of dialogue that is going on, isn't it? To hear it.
All the English actors know exactly what you're saying, but none of us do.
Right, I think it is the word argument that has misled us, maybe, isn't it? It is sort of an internal debate, basically.
As opposed to a disagreement.
As opposed, yes. How you're questioning it.
An argument in the sense, just like a lawyer came to mind. You have an argument. It's an overall speech you're going to make.
Yeah.
And here's this point, and which is to this point. My argument is one thing, but not...
Like building blocks.
It's a kind of reasoning rather than argument. Yeah, which one... Yeah, yes.
And yet all this bile and all this builds up to this wonderful last line. It gave him graceful posture. This is what
but it's
calm
also
and beautiful thing results out of all this.
It's such a pother. I mean, what does that mean? It's sort of like a make-up word, isn't it? And it's absurd. There's always absurdity there in Shakespeare.
It's because he doesn't understand. He can't see what they're looking at.
Yeah.
He can't see it to this extent.
Yes.
And that such a pother comes at the end of that incredibly long sentence that you were wondering when you would ever be able to breathe in.
Right there.
You don't breathe until you get to
right
and explode.
Exactly, yes.
But can you break up a line to breathe? I mean, is that like, you just don't do that?
Oh, you know what I mean? Just asphyxiate yourself if you
don't. Or do you just fall on the floor?
That's it.
I mean, our veiled dames commit the war of wine and damask, and then as they go to cheeks to the wanton spoil of feeble spring kisses. Is one.
Actually, not cheeks. You could take a breath after that.
No, you should be able to get to the one.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I guess you're right. It's just knowing it.
It's just knowing it.
Right.
You see, when you don't know, I mean, we never actually run out of breath when we're talking. We go on and on and on and on. Do you know what I mean? Because we know we're going to have to take a breath, and we make it stop there. Now, I want to look at something quite different. It's Sonnet 138, And I want to do it because I want it to alert us to games in Shakespeare, sense of wordplay, which is always there in Shakespeare, because there's always humour somewhere around. Look particularly at the puns in it.
When my love swears that she is made of truth, I do believe her, though I know she lies, that she might think me some untutored youth, unlearned in the world's false subtleties, thus vainly thinking that she thinks me young, although she knows my days are past the best. Simply I credit her false-speaking tongue. On both sides thus is simple truth suppressed. But wherefore says not she is unjust? And wherefore say not I that I am old? Oh, love's best habit is in seeming trust, and age in love loves not to have years told. Therefore I lie with her, and she with me, and in our faults by lies we flattered be.
It's brilliant, isn't it? It's wonderful. It has so many layers, this sonnet, of experience, you know, and it just goes deeper and deeper.
Well, I get the fact that he's having a great time being an older man, apparently having some kind of affair with a younger woman, that they comfort each other with lies, yes, and that's fine because they know that's their relationship.
Right.
And well, that's most relationships. And actually, because of the things we've been doing, yeah, I was able to connect this in a whole nother kind of way with the breath thing. So yeah, I was able to put things together and get total ideas and make it work for me. So I'm having much more fun with it, and I did find that it was not this deeply romantic kind of thing, but more a very light and kind of jolly kind of thing to say.
And yet it is both, really, isn't
yes,
it? Yeah. There's other things going on as well, isn't it?
Lie and lie. I lie with her.
And puns. How many puns can you find?
Yeah, that's lots of double entendres.
Yes. Would you choose a mate? No, no, not a woman, a friend, a bloke friend.
Oh, all right. I'm a bloke. All right.
What I want you to do, darling, what I want you to do, Samuel, is, can you just sit there as though you were having a drink in a bar? Is that all right? And just tell him. Yeah, and you, yes, you're up there as well. Just sit on there.
But they want me to stand. So we'll have to stand as if we're in a club.
All right, looking down. Oh, that's even better. You're looking down the bar. Right, that's brilliant. Right, okay.
When my love swears that she is made of truth, I do believe her, though I know she lies. That she might think me some untutored youth, unlearned in the world's false subtleties. Thus vainly thinking that she thinks me young, although she knows my days are past the best. Simply I credit her false-speaking tongue. On both sides, thus is simple truth suppressed. But wherefore says not she that she is unjust? And wherefore say not I that I am old? All love's best habit is in seeming trust, and age in love loves not to have years told. Therefore I lie with her and she with me, and in our faults by lies we flattered be.
Oh, that's wonderful, yes. That's brilliant. Yes. It's great. So can you hear that? I mean, it goes on from layer to layer, doesn't it, somehow? Each time you find something slightly different. It's like a cryptic crossword, really. That was great.
Wow, we've known each other for a very long time.
It was brilliant.
Poured out all my inner stuff.
Oh, what did he say? Poured out my inner stuff. Are you all right with that?
There's going to be a footnote somewhere in there. Wait till I get home.
Isn't it amazing how when you just give something as simple
place and specificity. The way you guys leaned against the railing was like, suddenly the whole thing changed. Yeah. And all the words became so much more specific and funny.
And the floor we sat on reeked of beer.
Yeah.
Well, that's a whole other story.
And he was quite slow with it, really, wasn't he, you see? I mean, this is the opposite, but we really were able to take those words in.
Also, his relationship with Paul was very honest, but your relationship with us was kind of like you were going to be deceitful. You know, it was like you were picking out somebody to have a lie with. You know?
That was brilliant because it just really illustrated the sense about language always having, double meanings, really, the ambiguity, ambivalence of it. I mean, I do think we always think we're very logical about how we, run our lives, but in fact we are not. We're much more ambivalent in how we operate, I think. Things like, there's a wonderful example, for instance, in Leontes in Winter's Tale, go play, boy, play. Thy mother plays and I play too. And that word play shifts from the sense of child's play to love play and then to the sense of playing a part. There are all those things happening all the time, and people enjoy that. I mean, children love nursery rhymes, don't they? And they love it if you sort of make them silly at the end and don't go quick. But they love wordplay, and that is part of it, and it's part of the joy of it. I would just like to finish the work on this sonnet by listing the puns, the wordplays, which it is so full of, and which makes it so fascinating. Words like made of truth could be made, M-A-D-E, or made, M-A-I-D. Subtleties could be subtle ties. Vainly thinking that she thinks me young. Vainly has two meanings. Simply I credit. Simple truth. Again, more than one meaning. Love's best habit, custom or clothes, is in seeming trust. And of course that last wonderful play on the word lie. Therefore I lie with her and she with me, and in our faults by lies we flattered be. Now we have enjoyed this and laughed, and perhaps a little too much, because the sonnet is also serious in that it expresses very subtly the layers of experience and feeling which accrue with age. And this, of course, is done through humour and a certain absurdity. But this only makes it the more poignant. In this next tape, tape 2, we will first be focusing on the vocabulary. That is, how the language Shakespeare uses in each play takes us into the world of that play and is intrinsic to the subtext in that play. For it is through the choice of language and imagery that we as an audience enter the world of the play, that other world which takes hold of our imagination and which excites us. We will also be looking at the structure of speeches and the whole balance between thought and emotion, so important for now when our whole style of acting and tradition has become much more rooted in emotion. And of course we will keep referring back to the work on metre and rhythm which we have been looking at